Good morning, everybody. I hope this video finds you well. Today, the subject is investigative reporting. Yesterday, one of my favorite YouTube channels, known as Redacted, had an article about a statement from the World Health Organization concerning Wuhan, and I got red under the collar and I left a comment. Essentially, I said, if you are going to do any kind of investigative journalism, you have to investigate all sides of the story. Other than that, if you are just reporting and commenting on something somebody said, you are doing opinion pieces. They're two separate things. The way propaganda works, people, is there's an issue. There's some issue, some event going on in geopolitics, geopolitical events say. There's some issue going on. And the government who started the issue wants to control the narrative. So they take little parts and they blow them up really big. And then they take significant parts and suppress it so nobody can see it. And then they have their army of propagandists that come forth, and then they hammer these little details in they turn these little tiny things into big issues. And that's the way propagandists work. And it's so easy to become an asset of a propaganda organization. All you do is just comment on something that the propagandists want you to comment on. And so you'll see all kinds of people talking about what the World Health Organization is saying about Wuhan and completely ignoring what the Chinese are saying. You understand what I'm saying here? You understand the point here, right? If you're going to talk about China, for God's sakes, don't you think you should at least hear the Chinese point of view? If you're going to talk about riots in Washington, D.C., don't you think you need to hear the American government point of view? Right? That's what happens. If you go over and watch Fox News or CNN or everything, and you want to know what's going on with these riots, you'll always hear what the government has to say, and you'll always hear what the protesters have to say. And depending upon the narrative that's being promoted by whatever side of the political spectrum, there will be a mix. It'll very rarely be balanced. It'll always be swayed in one area or the other. But in issues regarding China, it's always one-sided. It's always what the English-speaking Americans or Brits have to say, and zero of what the Chinese have to say about it. And that's what gets me upset. When was the last time that you heard a report on China where they actually said what China thinks? I'm waiting. If they say anything, it's a little trivial thing. Functionally, because the reporters can't read Chinese. And functionally also because a lot of news from China is absolutely and completely suppressed. You just can't see it at all. Now, it doesn't have to be China. It could be Russia. What's the first thing that Biden did when he decided to go full spectrum war against Russia? He cut off all communication, all news from Russia. What's the first thing Trump did when he decided to have war against China? Cut off all news and all sources from China. It's the same thing. So if you're reporting on anything, you're not hearing anything. And that's why I got kind of hot under the collar. And you too should all be ashamed of yourselves if you believe that one-sided reporting is a balanced news story. It's not. In Redacted, the guy actually used to work for Fox News, which prides itself, or used to pride itself, in being fair and balanced. So I want to know how you can present an article, how you can possibly present an article about China and not hear the Chinese story. How is that balanced? Well, no, we're not talking about China. We're talking about the World Health Organization in China. No. You're talking about China. You're talking about a World Health Organizational facility located in Wuhan, China, without any context, any whatsoever. You all couldn't put it out on a map. There's no context at all, not even a map, not even understanding where Wuhan is or what its significance is. So I'm going to tear this one little example down. Let's talk about Wuhan. If you were to map the population center of China, you will see the population as this red blob overlaid in China. There will be areas in the west that's sparsely populated, areas in the northeast that's sparsely populated, and this big red blob of massive population centered on the center east. It's almost like a circle. And in the exact middle of that circle of population is a transportation hub known as Wuhan. Wuhan was set up as a primary transportation hub because it was in the exact population center of China. Now, the biological facility that was placed there, it's true, it's funded by the United States and was placed there. It's not a Chinese facility. The people who run the facility are not Chinese. Though now it is. But when it was set up, it wasn't. And why these non-Chinese people, chose Wuhan to develop biological weapons is the same reasoning why they chose the 30-some facilities located in Ukraine. At least that seems to be obvious. They might have done it for other reasons. But putting a bioweapons facility located in the middle of the center of China is pretty fucking stupid. If you think China did that, then China is stupid. I don't even know what to think about you guys. China is many things, but stupid it is not. Now, to understand an issue, say the World Health Organization making a statement, then you have to know exactly the issues surrounding this. And when it comes to viruses and biological weapons, China is insanely particular about it and has written extensively about this issue. Extensively. It all began back in 1950 when the United States would unleash biological weapons on China. This is a historical fact. So let me review a couple things, because you as an audience are probably stupid enough and dumbed down enough not to realize this. Number one, America fought China. There was a war against China. America and China fought each other. That was in 1950. Number two, it's called the Korean War because the action took place in Korea. Number three, America lost. It was the first resounding, complete absolute defeat the United States ever had, and it's been a long string of defeats ever since. 4, America used biological weapons during that war. This is background. This is the bare minimum, trivial background you need to know between any conflict between the United States, China, or viruses. That's the bare minimum. Now let's go up to speed now. We also know, in addition, through public statements at the United Nations, in public venues such as the Winter Olympics in 2022, and during public treaties and signings such as the Chinese Friendship Forever Agreement, that China and Russia, and China alone, believes that the United States has nuclear or biological weapons, that it has been using them against the world, and this needs to stop. It needs to follow the UN protocols and stop developing biological weapons and using them. This is all public knowledge. I mean, it's not like you have to dig down in some dusty library to find out. This is well known, very, very accurate, easily obtained information. It's in English, for Pete's sakes. But how can you possibly talk about viruses in China without bringing this stuff up? How can you possibly do it? Well, that's because you are either a sloppy journalist or you're a propagandist. Those are the only two answers. You're either a sloppy journalist or a propagandist. Again, if you're doing investigative journalism, you must investigate the entire story. And in the case with China, it's easy. None of this is hidden. It's out in the open. It's on the fucking embassy web pages, for God's sakes. Type in China Embassy, United States. Go there. Read it. It's right there. Black and white in English. But if you're not even going to go over and do something like that, what's the matter with you, huh? So that's up to speed. So now you know the past. Now you know the current states. All right. And that's just bare minimum. You don't have to spend a lot of time dwelling on it. But if you're talking about viruses in China, you need to know those two parts. Now that you're up to speed on that, and now you know a little bit about the history, let's talk about recent history, because this is a dialogue that's omitted in all discussions about the World Health Organization and China and viruses. First of all, China is in DEFCON, defense control level. They call it something different, and it's a long string of words. I think it's like a paragraph long string of words. But basically, it's a state of national readiness to fight viruses. And there was just one that was released, an updated version was released just yesterday to the party Congress, where they said that they are going to continue indefinitely to forever this standing military posture on controlling viruses. Forever. So any of this news you hear from Bloomberg or CNN that China is relaxing their stance about COVID is, of course, bullshit lies. They're not. And second of all, it's not about COVID. It's against all viruses. Yesterday, I got notice that a package came from me. It was mailed in April from the United States. There was no name on the package giving the address of the sender, no phone number of the address of the sender, no physical address of the address of the sender. It's just a package addressed to me in one of my offices. And it went through its normal processing, because in China everything goes through processing, coronavirus and all this stuff. And they're not even going to let me near it unless I tell them who sent this package and what the contents are. And I told them, I have no clue who this person is. I have no clue what the package contents are. Send them back. And it's been sent back. There's no such thing as blind package delivery in China, unlike the United States. That's true. Because China is anal when it comes to things coming in the country. It's probably something innocuous, something innocent. Maybe a 1040 form was delivered to me. Who knows what it was? But even a 1040 form would say that it came from the U.S. government, so I don't know what this is all about. So the point is, China is very anal. Nobody talks about that. They say, well, China's impossible, no COVID policy is unrealistic and blah, 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 blah. You hear that. But you never hear the policy itself. You'll hear CNN saying, China's zero tolerance for COVID. They don't say China's policy against a virus entry, which is actually what it is. And this manipulation of language, this filtering, gives this picture of China being authoritative, totalitarian, zero tolerance for anything. When in reality, it's on a war footing because it's been carpet bombed by biological weapons, which brings us to this current event sequence. It would be one thing if it was only coronavirus, but it's not. It's multiple things. Multiple things. I call it carpet bombing of China by John Bolton because it is carpet bombing of China by John Bolton. It's not just, 11 some viruses that happened, strange, new, and novel viruses against all crops and all livestock that just hits China suddenly within a 2-3 month window, but it's also pests that suddenly started destroying crops and wheat and corn and soybean. These pests started flooding. Pestilence, plagues, viruses, all at once, while John Bolton was the head of, was Secretary of State under Donald Trump. Of course, China handled it, but it did cause prices to go up, but nobody starved in China. China's a hell of a lot more resilient than anybody else gives it credit for. Why wasn't that discussed? If you're going to be talking about viruses in the World Health Organization, why aren't you discussing that fact? Because it's a fact and it's super well documented. I don't mean a little bit documented. I mean like pages and pages. It's easy to find. Why do you refuse to at least say, well, yeah, it was carpet bombed by some bad entities back when Donald Trump was president. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. Let's talk about this. You could do it that way if you wanted to, but you have to at least pull the full picture. You always have to give a better picture, because other than that, you're just talking propaganda. Where's your full picture? And us expats, we kind of see it because we're here in China. We're reading the Chinese news. We're reading the American news. And we're like, what the fuck? It's like night and day. Because the American news leaves way so much out. They take the trivial and blow it on up. Have you ever, it's pretty ridiculous. So anyways, and it's not just that. But of course, coronavirus was one of 3 lethal viruses that hit the population. There was one in July, which was the tick virus, which causes hemorrhaging of your internal organs and then you vomit them out. That was the humanized tick virus with HIV inserts that hit Beijing. Beijing doesn't have ticks. Never had, never will. It's a dusty, cold place. Doesn't have ticks. Ticks come from warmer climates like the Carolinas, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, tick area. You won't find ticks in dry climates. So how in the hell did a tick virus go there? Especially one with HIV inserts that look just like the ones in coronavirus. How in the world did that happen? Well, they picked it out. Turns out that when these drones were spraying these virus agents to destroy the swine population, and this was after the event of COVID, patriotism just went up the roof, and all these bad agents, these bad actors who collaborated with the United States, took the information and gave it right to the Chinese government. Just here, just like that. It's like, and I'll tell you, the result was that as soon as it was released, Donald Trump knew about it, and it was found out, he went into immediate hiding. You probably remember this event in July 2020. That's when suddenly he had COVID and had to be whisked off to a hospital. Remember that? And he was in isolation for 3 days, and the United States automatically went DEFCON 1. Just, as normal protocol. That's how it was all described. The truth is that the United States decided to try a second one, and they were caught red-handed in China and Russia at the time, because China and Russia are like this. We're just about ready to nuke the United States. But you won't hear that in the American news, will you? But really, the point that I really want to talk about, and I'm just using this coronavirus situation, World Health Organization situation, as the vehicle to make this discussion about responsible journalism. I'm not a journalist, but I sure as hell have a better handle on what the hell's going on than what these sorry ass people who claim to be journalists do. Perhaps you should read what John Yunz has to say on the unz.com. Read what he has to say about it. Read what the Saker has to say about it. Read what Moon Over Alabama has to say about it. Read some of these alternative blogs and their reporting on these issues. Read some of these things, because at least they're doing journalism. You may not agree with what they have to say, but at least they're doing journalism. In decision making, you have to look at all variables in business. So let's suppose you want to decide whether your vacuum cleaner will play music when you vacuum, for instance. What you do is you make this matrix. At the top of the table, you put the various versions of the vacuum. A vacuum with no music, a vacuum playing music but only for a short period of time, a vacuum playing kiddie music, a vacuum playing rock music, a vacuum playing pop music, and then on the other sides you put down the issues involved. This will cost more money, this will be noisy, but it will, we put all the issues on the sides. And then with each solution, you put an X where it's applied, where it's applicable. So, for instance, if there's no music being played, then there's no X where it says neighbors might be upset. Okay. So you need to do this. It's called a matrix. Now, if you do a matrix and the problem is the Matrix is the name of a movie. So every time I say the word the Matrix, everybody thinks of the movie instead of what I'm talking about. But basically, when you do this comparative analysis of say Wuhan, and you look at the scenarios, you'll know the first thing you'll notice is the scenarios that they have at the very top of this checklist from America is only 2 instead of the 25 that really exist. There's only 2 scenarios. It's a natural pandemic or China released it. That's it. Those are the only 2 scenarios that are provided. But the obvious ones, America unleashed biological weapons against China to suppress it, to achieve United States goals, or these other scenarios, they're totally left off of the dialogue. They're removed through all discussion. There's no investigative journalism whatsoever on that. And there should be. But if when you do this, and you do this, and then you add every single factor, it's overwhelmingly indicative of a biological attack, full scale, against China. It's almost like America was some kind of bald-headed evil guy wearing a monocle and with a little pinky in the air like this, petting a white evil cat, or white fluffy cat, thinking of ways to destroy China. It's really just like that. The release of COVID was on Chinese New Year. That is where crowds are everywhere. You can't go anywhere without physically touching other people because you are packed like sardines everywhere. It's where all train stations, all airplane, all communication, everything is jam-packed. Chinese New Year, that's when the virus was released. And at its stage of highest contagiousness. Its release point was in the geographic center of the population. Those 2 coincidences are pretty damn amazing. And if you have any experience in black operations, you know that there's no such thing as coincidences. And I'm not going to go gain a function and all that kind of nonsense. I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. You don't need to know any of that stuff. I'm just talking about the bare minimum. I'm talking about reporting. You need to be able to report things as they are. So anyways, you don't have to believe. You can believe whatever you want. But if you compare what actually happened, the following picture is very clear. Coronavirus, the inoculation version, the sniffle version, the one that doesn't kill you, but gives you herd immunity, hit America and the UK and Europe, all American friends, in July 2019. And everybody started getting these mild sore throats that they had for 3 days, and that was it. But unbeknownst to them, unknown to them, they were getting immunity to coronavirus. Then in Wuhan, during the military games, there was an outbreak of version B, a lethal version, where people got seizures and just started dying. They pick up a pencil and they start getting a seizure and started dying. And it hit suddenly in the middle of Chinese New Year, and I got all tons of videos about that. It was frightening. It hit China and Iran simultaneously and wiped out the leadership of Iran. Just a coincidence, right? But you know, eventually what comes around, and when you release a viral agent, it'll disperse to the world. And when it hit the United States, even though many Americans, a huge segment of the population, was inoculated by natural immunity, the virus mutated and America was ill prepared, still is ill prepared, and many, many deaths. Meanwhile, China, who has experienced being carpet bombed by the United States in the Korean War, against livestock, against everything, knew exactly what to do. And so China went into complete lockdown. And that's the story, and that's what's going on. Now, you got this World Health Organization honcho making a statement. Fine, he makes a statement. Great. Now the narrative is to turn everything on its head. Blame China, blame China, blame China. You can't go through anything in the United States without blame China, blame China, blame China. Yeah, that's the way it works. Now, we're talking about this particular issue on viruses. But if you see the big picture, don't you think you have a better understanding of why things are the way they are? Now you understand why China insists on having zero tolerancing instead of, well, they're just being silly, which is the American narrative. The reason why people are fascinated with this subject, aside from the fact that they were in lockdown, is the fact that there's a lot of unanswered questions about the mRNA, about this and about that, and about how the system failed, and why the system did this and why the system did that, and why China's doing things. There's all these unanswered questions, and the answers they're getting is insufficient. And so they want more. Well, the news media wants this situation. They want you yearning for more because it builds up ratings on their programs. That's how they make money. All right, so this is well-known news. If you have lived outside the United States, you will realize that this is pretty much true. What I'm saying, if you've been inside the United States, you'll view this as ridiculous because America would never. I hear this so many times. America would never. Says the person who can't name the 15th president of the United States, can't name the capitals of all the cities of the United States. You know, the ignorance in America is pretty damn astounding. The bottom line is, if you're going to do any kind of investigative journalism, call yourself an investigative journalist, then you need to show both sides of the story. And if you can't show both sides, at least you can put the other side's point of view. That's what investigation is. That's why they call it investigative journalism. It's not that hard, especially when it comes to viruses. The Chinese government has put out a lot of stuff, and there's been a lot of talk on a lot of channels. You've got to remember, people, population of China is 5 times that of the United States. Proportionally, the discussion median is 5 times larger at a minimum, probably more like 15 times the size of the United States. These articles are everywhere where people are talking about the drones that sprayed the viruses against the pigs, about the viruses that destroyed the chicken industry, about the viruses that went on over and affected all the sheep, about the plagues that rampaged through the soybean fields and the corn. There's tons of articles about this. And you're not going to mention any of it because you're not bothering to do a little investigative part of the journalism. I'm going to tell you something. I'm telling this to all these people out here. How dare you call yourself investigative journalist when all you do is spend most of your time putting on makeup and reading from a script? You have to be spending some time doing some investigations. And it doesn't mean that you have to do complete and thorough investigations either. You could be trivial about it. You could just read what the embassy has to say, the embassy statements or the government statements. More thorough investigation might be, go through the Chinese versions of Facebook and Chinese versions of TikTok and Chinese versions of all their chats. Hear what they have to say. And when you do, you're going to be totally embarrassed of the one-sided propaganda bullshit that you have been played by. You would be totally embarrassed. You may not like to hear what you discover. You may not like it, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a career responsibility, a responsibility towards your nom, the name that you call yourself. You can say, for instance, you could do what Rush Limbaugh said. He says he is just a commentator on football and sports and golf and politics. He called himself a commentator. But if you're an investigative journalist, you have to do investigations. So don't call yourself investigative journalism unless you're doing investigations. And if you're talking about China, you're sure as shit better start reading about what they have to say. Frosts me over. I'll get some beta males. These lightweight popcorn throwers in the comments every now and then. And they'll use passive-aggressive language, saying that I'm crazy or an asshole or whatever. Those of you who know me know what happens to these people, don't you? You know what happens to them, right? And those who don't know me, well, why don't you find out? There's a list is growing. But sometimes I believe that my role is to accelerate the evolution of some of these people who have bad habits and prevent them from hurting themselves. And a little bit of humble pie being thrown on a template that's an arduous one might change their attitudes. Don't you know? And for all this, all I can think of is there's a Chinese song actually, and I'm going to play it here as I close, because it completely reflects how I feel regarding these passive-aggressive beta male nothings that squeak in the night. And for all you other guys, well, you know the drill, man. Fight the good fight, because I believe in you.
却 治不了就放任，